Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon breakout sessions on day 2 of ProfCon. Again, thank you all for being here. Hopefully everyone's had a good conference so far. Hopefully everyone is getting a lot out of the sessions they're attending, our keynote speakers. We tried to really put a conference together that would help you as digital marketing educators, and we are excited to keep this thing rolling with this afternoon block where we've got a really good opportunity to talk through our process here at Stukent and kind of our mindset as we create simulations. So a couple of housekeeping items. I'll introduce myself today. Love to see engagement in the chat. Had a great opportunity to MC Karen's session yesterday, so I'm really excited to see her in the chat. Let me know where you're from, what you teach, how long you've been teaching. Throw some stuff in the chat and we'll just kind of keep an eye on it as we go. Questions, we've got a Stukent employee here with me that will be tracking those questions from the chat as we progress with the sim, and then we'll be able to have some question and answer at the very end. That being said, this is intended to be a very interactive session today, which there's a little bit of a challenge there because we've got about a 30-second delay from when I talk to when you hear it. And so we'll be navigating that a little bit as we move into the interactive portion of the presentation today. So again, a couple of quick housekeeping items. We're going to be watching for engagement in the chat and on socials to pick that kind of most valuable poster for this session. It's a $5 Amazon gift card for the person that is most engaged in the chat and on socials. A couple of other housekeeping items before we get going. Don't forget about the product booths that you can go and attend and talk with some of our course consultants, learn more about the products. You can ask more questions and dive deeper into some of the products that we have, some of the textbooks that we offer, and that courseware solution that we talk about a lot at Stukent. So let's jump right in. So I am Brady Adams. I am the Vice President of Product here at Stukent. And I am passionate about what we're doing here at Stukent and fulfilling our mission of helping educators help students help the world. So really excited to spend some time with you today and talk about our mindset as we look at this, the simulation side of courseware, right? We have textbooks, simulations. There's a lot more that goes into that courseware offering, which is lesson plans and syllabus and all of that other stuff you guys have come to know and use in our Stukent products. But simulations really provide an amazing opportunity to bridge that gap between academia and industry. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I wanted to share some information about me, taking, Karen, I know she's in the chat. So taking some notes from her session yesterday on personal branding. I wanted to share a couple of things about me, who I am. I'm a huge believer that, everything we do in life a lot of times revolves around relationships with people. I love what we're doing here at Stukent. I love our mission. I love our products. I love working with educators and students. I'm passionate about that. But I do all of that because of my family. I want to support them and provide them with opportunities. And so everything I do is for them. So I've got a picture of my family here, my beautiful wife, Courtney, and then I've got 3 boys, Cooper, Beck, and Finn, 11, 9, and 3. And they are a ton of fun. One of the things that I'm really passionate about that I love to do is snow ski. You can see a picture of me and my, at the time, 2-year-old Finn up on a local mountain here in Idaho Falls, just outside of Idaho Falls. It's called Kelly Canyon. I'm on ski patrol there, so that's another thing that I love to do. Is for the longest time I was planning on being a dentist, so I took all sorts of classes in college that were preparing me for dental school, including human anatomy and physiology and biology, and so I enjoy the medical profession. Glad that I'm not in it, but I get to dabble a little bit as a ski patroller and an outdoor emergency care technician. So the last picture you see there is me, my wife, and then some of my in-laws. This was just this last year. That was the sixth year in a row that we've done the Grand Canyon hike rim to rim. It is about 24 miles. The scenery is stunning. You go from 9,000 feet to 2,000 feet, and then 2,000 feet to 6,000 feet or 7,000 feet. And it's an amazing hike. We do it in one day, and it's something that I look forward to every single year, doing that with my wife and my family. So the next thing that I wanted to share with you is another thing about me is we've recently remodeled a house, and you can see the old picture on top and then what we remodeled to on the bottom. And the pictures on the left are taken from about the same spot, and the pictures on the right are taken from about the same spot. So you can see that we have done a lot of work, and I've done almost all of it myself with the help of a fantastic father who's an electrician. But the reason why I share that with you is it ties into some of the things I want to talk about today, and some of my own personality that I wanted to share, and why I love building simulations. I love the remodel process because I like taking and looking at a particular, in this case, home. You could call it a problem. You could call it, analyzing the needs of our family. And then I came up with a solution. So in these pictures, you can see that previously the kitchen was really narrow, and then there was a dining room separating it. The entryway had everything walled off, and we opened it up completely because we love being around an island. We love sitting at the island. We love having people over, and people can sit at the table. People can sit at the island. So for me, it wasn't just part of the design process and building and creating some really fun things. It was accomplishing an objective, and that was creating a space where my family could enjoy one another, enjoy our friends. And so I'm going to refer back to this remodel a couple of different times, but that was just one more, some additional details about myself that I wanted to share. And again, thanks, Karen, for making sure that I included those aspects in my presentation and continuing to build my personal brand. So that brings us to today, right? I mentioned Stu Kent's mission to help educators, help students, help the world. There's a lot of different ways that we do this at Stu Kent, and there's a lot of different things that we're trying to do to help you as educators improve the resources you have in the classroom. One of the ways, we want to offer more than just a textbook. We want to offer more than just additional resources. We want to offer that simulation that provides that hands-on experience, but in an environment where if they fail, that's okay. They can fail often, they can fail fast, and it's not going to carry the same impact on them as if when they're actually in an internship with a real company or in their first job. And the simulations can allow for that. And we are really proud of our simulations, and we're really proud of what we're building here at Stu Kent. A lot of you probably know what we offer with Mimic Pro and Mimic Social, and those learning objectives we're trying to accomplish, and how they help you in the classroom and how they help students. Giving students an opportunity to practice those real world skills of pay-per-click advertising, or in Mimic Analytics case, A/B testing, data transformation, where we're grading the student's ability to do, we're automatically grading the student's ability to do and clean a data file. There's some really great things that we're doing, and that is what we're excited about here at Stucant. And today, I want to take you guys through our thought process of what we are starting to think about as we're engaging with educators, as we're engaging with subject matter experts, as we're going back and looking at our previous textbooks and saying, what type of simulation could we include here? What are the things that we need to pull from industry and provide opportunities for students to practice those things? So we all play a role in this topic of bridging the gap between academia and industry. Stucant's role is to provide you courseware that is engaging, that is up to date, that is relevant, and all the resources to help you manage a class. That's our role. Your role as the educator is to make sure that the students really are learning the theory, and they're learning that foundational knowledge of so many different topics. I just am impressed all the time as we interact with educators, and the amount of information that you guys are taking and putting it into a way that students can easily consume and retain that information. I'm impressed with the work that you guys do. And the students have a role in that as well, right? They have to be engaged. They have to be willing to pay attention. They have to be willing to put in the time and the energy that it takes to hone those skills, to learn the topics, and to practice and gain mastery in the subjects that you guys are teaching. So this brings me to the title of this slide, and that is "Your resume needs you to be here." So in my previous career, before I came to Stucant, I was working for a nonprofit, higher education-based nonprofit that worked closely with BYU Idaho to provide real-world experiences to students to fulfill their internships, project-based internships that they would do remotely. If many of you listened to Acadium's presentation this morning, we were doing that, but at just an individual one-off relationship with BYU Idaho. And so I worked a lot with students, and I worked a lot with businesses, and kind of finding that bridging that gap between what do businesses need, what are their gaps in, whether it's talent or knowledge, and what experience they need to gain, and what they're learning from school, and how we can apply those things. That was my role there, and I was giving a presentation to some students at the start of the semester talking about internships and what we were trying to accomplish by providing them that real world experience. And I didn't recognize that I said it, but I had about 5 different people quote me on LinkedIn in posts when I said, "Your resume needs you to be here." The workforce is becoming more and more competitive, and sadly, it's not enough for students to just have a 4-year degree anymore, because everyone applying for the entry-level position, they have it as well. And so we need students to be able to differentiate themselves with real-world experience, with tangible skills that are being asked for in those in those entry-level jobs. Because it's interesting to me to see so many entry-level positions posted where it says, 4-year degree, blah, 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 but then it says 3 years of experience. Well, how do we expect our students to get 3 years of experience when they are in school? And most of them aren't working full-time. They aren't getting meaningful experience from their current employment. So we need them to be able to get those skills in other ways. Simulations can help. It's not the solution. It is part of the solution. They still need to do internships. They still need to do class projects. They still need to have team experiences where they're building their communication skills. They still need to show mastery through taking tests and assessments, but simulations can play a part. So I want to take a couple minutes. I want to share my story, and one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this topic of helping students to gain experience that will help them articulate who they are as a potential candidate. So I got my undergraduate degree from Utah State University in international business. I needed to do an internship for that degree. I needed to travel abroad with my classmates, or I needed to do an internship for an international company, and had a wife and a newborn. So traveling, for 3 months with classmates, although seemed fun, didn't want to leave my family. So I had an internship with a company in Idaho Falls, and they were an international company, and I did some things for them for about 3 months, and then they hired me full-time in supply chain. I am not by nature a supply chain person, right? They had a position, and they offered me 2 jobs at the same time, and one, there was a few more unknowns, and the supply chain people really were aggressive in saying, hey, come work for us. And I was hired as a purchaser in the supply chain department. So fast forward a couple of years, I went and I got my MBA at night while still working. And I neared the end of as I was getting close to the end of that MBA, I knew that I wanted to leave that employer and I wanted to go and do something else. One, because again, I wasn't a supply chain person, and there were so many other things that I felt like I could better use my natural talents and abilities, and other things that I was more interested in from just that more aligned with my passions or my abilities. And so I started applying for jobs. So 3 years of work experience, an MBA, and I was applying for jobs that were not supply chain jobs. And so again, I look at this line here that your resume needs to articulate who you are as a potential candidate. Mine did not. My resume did not help a potential employer understand how I was going to help them in the job that they had posted. And that was so frustrating to me. The robots that read resumes they would just pass over my resume because I didn't have the right keywords. And so I became very frustrated in this process of finding a job. Now, it was through networking that I found my next job, not through my resume, right? It was through networking and getting an interview and being able to showcase my talents and skills via interview, not via my resume. So we have to help our students. And so that's why I'm so passionate about our topic today, because I can't go and find an internship for every single one of your students. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. And to be candid, you can't either. And so how do we provide them with opportunities to practice real world skills without having to go and take a semester off or work part-time or find that internship? Well, we can do that through simulations. And so that's why we're here today. And so we're going to talk through, and this is Stu Kent, this is us, this is our perspective. So, this is the way we look at simulations when we're talking about, okay, what simulation should we build next? What are the things, where are there needs in the in higher ed or in high school where we need to provide students with a simulated experience to help them gain real world skills? So we're going to walk through this from a question-based approach. I'm a huge believer in question-based selling, question-based ideation. And so those are really what we're going to go through. We're going to go through 3 different types of questions. And this is where we're going to spend some time. And actually, we're going to get, hopefully get a little bit more interactive. And again, it's difficult. If we were in a big conference room, I'd break you guys up into groups and we'd assign topics and we'd have 7 whiteboards, and it would be a lot easier than what we're going to have to try to do today. But nonetheless, we're going to talk through some of the questions that we use here at StuKent as we engage with subject matter experts. And then I'm going to give some time to you to just take and whiteboard on your own. Throw some ideas on a piece of paper, get an Excel spreadsheet out, and think through some of the questions that I'm going to pose and write them down. And then as you get near the end, share some of them in the comments. And then we'll go back and we'll kind of review some of them. And I'll give you some examples of some of the simulations that we're ideating through right now. And we'll use some of those as examples. So again, hopefully we can make this as interactive as possible. But these are the questions that we like to ask our subject matter experts, or in a focus group, or to students, whatever it might be. We want to get people's wheels turning on how we can best take the learning objectives from a class and make sure that those learning objectives are inside the simulation. That's really, really important. And so, again, we're going to kind of just talk through these questions real quick. I don't need to read them all out loud, but here in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn about 5 minutes over to each of you to take some time and just, again, jot some thoughts down on these particular questions as it relates to the classes that you teach, the topics maybe that you're interested in. Maybe it's not even related to what you teach. Maybe it's another simulation that you've thought of, like, this would be really cool, right? Think through that process. Use these questions to think through the process. So again, key learning objectives. That's what we want to draw out. And a couple of these questions I want to focus on. Which learning objectives are difficult to teach in a classroom setting? Look at Mimic Pro and the ability to do paid per click advertising with a substantial budget, right? That's an example of that's hard to teach in a class. You can talk through concepts, you can talk through examples and case studies, but then actually being able to practice that, because you could have them go and build a website. And again, it's been mentioned, Scott Calley's WordPress assignment is fantastic, but how do we really give them a large budget so that they can really see the impact of large budget pay-per-click advertising? It's the same thing with that next question down, and that is, due to the length of the semester, which is hard to teach. Again, a new product launch might span an entire year. So how do you simulate that, or how do you make the students, how do you help them understand that concept and that topic in a condensed time frame of a semester? An 8-week class, that's a lot of information to try to get through. Again, establishing a website, there's lots of things that fit into both of those. Mimic Social's another good example to see the benefits of social media advertising over time, and in a way with enough data to make it so that the students can really analyze and understand the decisions they make, the levers they're pulling, and how that impacts revenue in the real world. So this is another really good one. We're going to talk a lot more about the connection to industry on the next set of questions. But which of the learning objectives from your class are closely related to key job functions in industry? So whether that's you going and looking at job postings on LinkedIn, or whether that's you networking with industry professionals, whether that's you looking back on your career, before you got into academia, if you worked, and thinking, okay, what are those things that I need to make sure that are in my class, in my syllabus, called out as learning objectives, and how do those relate to like a day-to-day job function in industry? And then again, you can see some of those other questions, again, focusing on how these learning objectives are going to strengthen their resume. So again, you can see these questions. We're going to take about 5 minutes. We're going to have a whiteboard session. I'm going to go back to that slide right now so that you guys have this up. The time is on my clock. It's going to be a little bit different for you guys, is 12:25. So we're going to come back just at about 12:30. And again, start putting in some of your answers. If you have them, throw the question and the answer in the chat. We can start to review those, but I'm going to turn the time over to you. And I'm going to kind of go through this exercise myself here on this side as well. So take about 5 minutes. All right. So I've seen a couple of comments come in. Again, don't hesitate to throw in some of your thoughts into the comment section. A couple of the things that you guys mentioned in the comments revolve around what I would consider those really, really critical intangible skills, those soft skills. I think both Sean had mentioned it when he said it's difficult to teach the volume of theories needed so they can apply them readily. So having that big, large pool of knowledge for them to draw on as they're solving problems for their employer. Stacy mentioned it with, I believe it was Stacy. Yeah, it's sometimes difficult to always show how something applies to the workplace. There's a couple of other ones that I've seen here that are kind of around those soft skills that I totally agree that there are going to be learning objectives that tie directly to your course, to the subject that you are teaching. There are going to be other parts of the simulation that revolve around storyline, or that we try to bake into the scenario to hopefully help with some of those other aspects, some of those soft skills, some of the problem solving where maybe it's not the right or wrong answer. Maybe they've got to think through something critically and then make some decisions, and they have to analyze what they did, even though there maybe wasn't a right or a wrong answer. So all of that really, really great feedback in there. Lots of different, looks like we got sports marketing. Wendell had thrown in. Learning objective is that the students understand what goes into a successful sporting event. If the student has never been to a major sporting event, customer service is needed in the industry and understand other people's needs. Excellent, right? Thinking through a learning objective to say, like, okay, in the real world, when a student is performing this function, what do they need to know? And in this case, the importance of understanding the sporting event and what's going on, and then also the customer service aspect of it. That's great. Wendell, thanks for sharing. So let's see what else we got here. I'm just scanning some of the comments. Great stuff, guys. So I hope that you guys recognize and don't just look at this activity as something of, oh, this is what would be in a simulation, because you could use this to understand, okay, hey, you know what, I need to reach out to industry professional because I need them to come and do expert session with my students, similar to, I think somebody mentioned they have HR professionals come, because you might not have a development team like I have on the other side of the wall that can build simulations, and they know how to architect and engineer a solution and really get into the code to make these things happen. But you can still go through this exercise and say, if I had a simulation, or just answer these questions for the face value and say, what do I need to add into my course to create that better blend between academia and industry? And so, again, really, really great stuff coming through the chat. There's a lot that goes into a simulation. Hopefully that's one thing that I'll illustrate today is there's lots of, we get it internally where we'll have one of our course consultants has a conversation with an educator, and they say this simulation would be really great. And then I'll reach out to them and say, like, hey, what are some of the thoughts? What are some of the learning objectives? And they're like, oh, we didn't really think through that. It just seemed like a topic that needed a simulation. And a lot of times I couldn't agree more. But taking that idea, that concept, and putting it into a simulation and a framework, something that we can auto grade, something that we can provide some sort of an assessment to you as the professor to give you some insights into how the students are doing, how they're performing, are they understanding the concepts from class? Those are all the things that we wrap into the discussion as we go through the simulation. So anyways, use this list, not just here, but use it in your class to say, okay, how can I strengthen my own courses? And hopefully through the process, you could uncover some things that we could that could potentially be used in a simulation. And at the end of both at the end of the presentation and also at the end of the going through these 3 types of questions, I'll have a link that has a survey. And if you want to engage with us more, if you want to potentially talk about a simulation idea or talk through potentially being a subject matter expert for one of our future simulations, if you want to be part of a focus group, if you want to be part of kind of our early adopter, early access pool of professors, feel free to fill out that survey. If you want to take some of your thoughts that you've put down in your whiteboard session, you want to put them into that survey. I've got a spot where you can put your thoughts from the learning objective questions and then the other 2 question types, just as kind of a brain dump that you can share with us, and then we can hopefully engage with you in the future as we move into other simulations. So really, really great stuff. So the next type of question that we like to talk through is that connection to industry type of question. And that is, again, just look at that top question and you can kind of get a feel for what we're trying to uncover with these types of questions. And that is, what are the hands-on experiences that internship providers, and you could include employers in that as well, not just internship providers, wish that your students had once they finished your class. So I'm attending this class and you're preparing me as the student to enter into an internship. What are those skills that, if we were to go and ask that employer, what do they need to know to be successful? What are those things? And list them out. It's interesting. I think a lot of times, looking back on my experience with working with businesses and preparing projects for students, sometimes it was, when you asked this question, it was the soft skills. It was the stuff that weren't specific to a class. It was the ability to be a problem solver, to be a good communicator, to do those other things that are what I would say less, more of that intangible skill that is really, really critical in the workforce. But still, there are specific things, especially when you're talking digital marketing or social media marketing, or public relations, right? There are things that we can then even we can dive a little bit deeper into that subject, and then we can ask those questions and tie it specifically, the industry requirements, to your class, because everyone's going to say, oh, great communicators and problem solvers and those things, and then ask some more questions of yourself or of a potential employer if you have a chance to be in front of them and say, no, here's the learning objectives from my class. What of these things are really important to you as you look at a potential candidate? What are those repetitive day-to-day job functions? So Mimic Pro and Mimic Social, those are really good examples of students get in and they practice pay-per-click advertising, and they do it over and they do it over and they do it over, they do it over, right? Social media, running a social media campaign and setting it up to run that monthly social media campaign, right? Those are types of things they're going to do in the real world. And those are things they're going to do as part of an entry-level job. They're going to be part of those decisions or those strategies or the actual execution, the tactical execution of those things. So we need to give them that repetitive practice. Another really, really important thing that we like to think through is what industry tools or platforms can we mimic? We try to stay platform agnostic, right? Because we need to recognize that there are still things like Bing and other search engine other platforms that our students are going to need to potentially use in the workforce. But can we mirror something like CRM? Can we mirror an industry tool that is widely used and widely accepted? Those are really, that's a really good process to think through, because we need to build out an interface for the students to be able to make decisions and put different inputs in. And so we need some sort of an interface. And if we can mimic something that exists in industry, we're preparing our students even more for the future. And again, you can see the other ones, those are some other questions to think about. So we're going to take, again, 5 minutes, and we're going to go through that same process. I want you guys to kind of go through this list and just jot some ideas down for some of the questions, all the questions, one of the questions. Just kind of think through it. And again, from the perspective of what would we put in a simulation, but also as an educator, what can I pull from this exercise that I could help in my classroom right now? So again, 5 minutes. So we've got 12:40 that just passed into 12:41. So let's be back here at about 12:45. I'll jump back on. But again, I'm gonna scroll through some of the stuff in the chat right now, and then we'll be back. So 5 minutes. Awesome. Again, guys, thanks for the engagement. Again, this in a conference room setting is a lot different, where a group might be able to raise their hand and say, hey, this is some of the thoughts we had. So I appreciate the information in the chat. Keep it coming. Again, more than anything, leveraging these questions to kind of get the wheels turning. And then actually here, there's a couple of questions about some of our other simulations or other simulations we have in the works. And again, at the end of, near the end of this presentation, we're going to get into actually looking at what our engineering team, our product development team, has built as part of the process of creating Mimic Analytics. And that is a framework for simulation development. So anyways, let's move on. We're gonna get to that. Let's jump into the next set of questions. So this is something we like to talk through with an instructor, because we recognize that when you start talking software or software limitations, or even the lack of understanding of what software can do, it's really easy to immediately put constraints on a conversation. And so we like to talk through this kind of these dream big questions, so that we hopefully, we take the shackles off, and we let a subject matter expert really jump into what is possible. What could we do if there wasn't a limitation to technology? And now that's where we like to take the conversation, so that we can then scale it back and understand, okay, what does, we use the term MVP, which is a minimum viable product. A lot of you guys have probably heard that before. It's what can we take from this big idea that would be ideal to teach this subject, and can we scale it back to something that is still going to help the students. It's going to help them improve their ability to practice a learning objective from your class, and it's going to get them moving forward in the right direction without the big grand solution that might take too much time and energy and resources to fully build. And so we ask, what does your dream simulation look like, right? So taking those questions from before, right, and having put some thought into those learning objectives and what industry is asking for and what they might need, and then say, okay, what does that simulation look like? Or what does your dream courseware bundle look like? And then really just mapping it out and saying, okay, this is what it would include in its entirety. And then we, again, internally, we kind of boil that back. So again, take about 5 minutes, go through this. Again, I'm scanning through the chat on what's going on with these questions or stuff you've put in previously. Yeah, Sean, thanks for echoing my sentiment there. Doing it through a keyboard's a little bit tricky, but again, I hope you guys are getting kind of a vision for why, when we talk through what a simulation would include, kind of our mindset at Stukent, and what we're trying to uncover from our educators, so that we can help the students, right? And so that we can really tie, bridge that gap between academia and industry. So 5 minutes. It's 12:50 right now on my top time clock. So let's jump in, think through these questions, really focus on that top one and maybe that third one as it relates to your subject. All right, guys. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Again, I I love this question of, what would your dream simulation look like? Because it allows you to kind of, okay, I'm going to get out of the box and think, what would I build to really help my students prepare for the real world, prepare for the workforce? And so I love what you guys are putting down there. And Brennan, he just posted a comment right here at the end that caught my eye. I don't think it's off the beaten path at all, Brennan, and that is the importance of teaching some of those life skills and those intangible skills and values of diversity and equity. Like, all of that type of stuff is great. And we're talking through internally lots of different ways that we can try to incorporate those into any simulation. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to run this social media campaign, but we would include ways that we could incorporate some of those concepts as well, whether it was through angry email from a customer or a coworker, something that forces a student to be like, oh, wow, this is an uncomfortable situation. How would I respond? Nothing can replace the learning that comes from being in that situation in real life in the workplace, but can we give students the ability to maybe see some of those things before they get to the workplace so that they can have a better understanding of how they might respond? Don't think it's off the beaten path at all. Other stuff in there, great, guys. I mean, I see all sorts of stuff throwing a wrench into what the strategy that they might have from John. Stacy, the HR stuff you're putting in there is awesome. I'd love to learn more and talk a lot more through that process. Owning your own business, I think Sean or Wendell's sports marketing, Sean has some stuff in there about running a business. Anyways, there's some of those things that I'm excited to show you what we've built in our simulation framework, so you can hopefully see where we can easily transition some of the work that we've done into accomplishing the things that you're describing, the learning objectives that you've called out. And so anyways, really, really excited to keep going. So I'm going to put this next slide up here. This is a QR code, and I'm going to have Genna posted in the chat right now. It's a link to a Google form survey that I whipped up really quick. So it's nothing fancy. But if you want to take some of your ideas and you want to throw them in that form, if you want to engage with us, you don't have to do it now. Don't take time to do it now. Stay here and stay engaged with us. But there's that link. Copy it, throw it in a browser somewhere, scan that code with your phone, and take that survey at some point. Because honestly, there's a lot of really good stuff going on. But when we talked through with Brennan, now that I know Brennan's on here, Brennan spent weeks and weeks with us, our product owner and our product marketing manager, talking through the scenarios and the learning objectives. When we ideated through our marketing principles simulation with Kendall Wilson, and I'll show you some of that in here in just a minute, we spent an entire 4 days. She came out to Idaho, and me and the vice president of marketing sat in a room with Kendall, and we whiteboarded out and we talked through this. So there is a lot of, Brennan, I will solve that permissions issue. Actually, Genna, could you see if you could do that, because you're a student employee? Thanks for that note, Brennan. But it's a lot more than just even a couple of notes in the chat. And so if we get to the point where we're starting to talk about those subjects, having a list of engaged professors that we could potentially pull in to focus groups and as subject matter experts is really, really valuable to us. So, all right. So those are those questions that we like to think through. That's kind of that's where we start, right? And it's really important that we start there, because those learning objectives are the most important piece of the simulation. Now, one of the things that we are providing and that we're talking about is having what we call the Buoy Supply Co. That's the company. That's our fictitious company. If any of you have played Mimic Social or Mimic Analytics, you will have seen Buoy as a company. Pro uses Kent's Camera Castle. But this Buoy Supply Co. ecosystem that we're talking about here is it provides us an opportunity and a framework that allows us to put together scenarios or storylines and pick a job title, a job function, and hopefully kind of connect those two dots. And, I look back to my experience when I was finding projects for students. It was, you had to find the project, you had to find the company, you had to identify the project, and it was different every time. And there were different nuances of their business that changed the way that we would build out a project for students to work on. What we're trying to do is build out this ecosystem for Buoy so that we have a really clear connection between, okay, here's these learning objectives, here's the company. We don't have to come up with this whole new business to support the simulation. We've got one. We have metrics, we have data, we have conversion rates, and we have data files, we have sales data. All right, we've got this ecosystem, and we can leverage that to build out a simulation. So we talk through learning objectives, and then we say, okay, here's this Buoy supply company. Students love it because it's relatable. It's actually one of our authors, Radhika, who wrote our consumer behavior textbook. She uses a simulation. I won't use. It's a competitor from a very large publisher, and her comment was, Buoy is so much more relatable to the students than the company that they are, in the simulation that we use. The students, it just doesn't, they're not engaged with that company. And with Buoy, we're trying to create kind of that lifestyle brand company, what they would see on Instagram, a Herschel bag company style company where they can relate and they're engaged. Oh, I'm making an impact in selling these really cool backpacks, or building out social media campaigns for this really cool company. I'm doing some data visualization for for this really cool company. And so that's some really the reason why we want to focus on Buoy. I put a little description here from Buoy that Buoy is an e-commerce retail bag supplier, specializes, and then you can see the different bags that we have there. One tagline in one of the simulations is, if it's a bag, Buoy makes it, right? And so that's what we're trying to build out when we're talking this Buoy ecosystem. And we want to make we want to be able to take the ideation, those questions that we've gone through, and then tie it to a scenario, to a company, to an actual role within a fictitious company. And that's a really important part of kind of the simulation process. And I think I'm going to try to get you guys access to the form really quickly. Let me see if I can. Okay. Ganna's going to get in there, and let me move to the next slide real quick, Ganna. So now some of the things that we have in this Buoy ecosystem, right? I put here products, personas, and data. I mean, that's just a little bit, but I wanted to illustrate that with some of the elements that we've built. So what you see here, these are actually elements from simulations that we've either built or are currently creating. And again, we want to create something that's engaging, that's visually appealing, that's real to life, that is exciting for the students to work on. And so a product library, and you can see here we use it's anyways, I won't jump into the technical details there, but we can build out all sorts of different backpacks or satchels or purses or wallets and different colors and different configurations. And that's what the students can sell. And so that's a really kind of exciting thing for our students to be able to work on. It's relatable. When we're talking about when they're going to be writing surveys, or they're going to be cleaning data, they're going to be doing A/B testing and getting results, right? It's around, again, products that they can relate to, the data that they can pull. There's brands that they're going to recognize. Looks like Genna just got the that form up, but again, we can do that in a little bit. And then, these personas, some of you probably recognize these personas from Mimic Social. We've taken those personas and we've modified them into a different element for a different simulation for a different purpose. But we can have this list of personas, and that those personas can then be leveraged across all of the simulations, and students can get engaged and recognize, like, oh, it's, Daypacker Tom is the right, he's my target audience, and so I need to focus my efforts on him. Or maybe it's a combination of personas, and then they can be able to get that data back. Again, back to that one question: what's hard to simulate in a semester? Well, months and months and months worth of data, sales data, and so that's what we're trying to accomplish by having a buoy ecosystem, a fictitious company that we can use and leverage. So let me see if I can go this way. So I wanted to share this. We're not going to really dive deep into this. This would be something that we would spend a lot of time on if we were in person, if we were ideating through the simulation. But there's really 4 areas of focus that the product development team, our product marketing managers, a subject matter expert, that we're going to try to think through to give us a structure for building out a simulation. And that is these 4 that you can see on the screen right here. And I'll kind of give you an example of each of these. The student interactions, that's, back to the comment I made about mimicking a real world platform or tool like Google AdWords, for instance, right? Those interactions, the inputs, what the students enter, those are those interactions. So what interactions do we need to have? What interactions do we need to mimic the real world? What is the storyline? How are they going to navigate? Like, that's the student interactions. And we want to make sure that those, for every learning objective, we have the appropriate student interactions. Scoring, student scoring. Think of this as the algorithm, right? This is that kind of secret sauce that helps simulate a 30-day, a 30-day social media campaign, or a 30-day pay-per-click advertising campaign. And we need to think through that for every single learning objective. Is this learning objective something that needs graded or scored, or how, some sort of an assessment on the students, the work that they did. Student results. This is something we've put a lot of time and thought into recently as we've gotten into Mimic Analytics. Brennan can attest that as we built out what the students were going to do and how they would be scored, we didn't put as much time and energy into, okay, what do the students need to see? What data do we need to present them? What results do we need to show them so that they can connect the dots? And so we're being very, very intentional about thinking through what the results students are going to see. And then instructor insights. Our mission at Stukin is to help educators, help students, help the world. We need to be able to provide our educators, our instructors, with insights into how the students did. And so those are the 4 things that we kind of focus on as an organization. And again, we're not going to dive too much deeper into that. But I want to get into now Mimic app. This is something that's very, very exciting to us. And we've already recognized its power in helping us, rapidly develop sims. And I've got a couple of things highlighted here that you can see. I've got a couple of things, a circle around them. So there's a black circle up top. That's the help button. The great green, or so you can see some of those different things. That is the skeleton of every single simulation that we have, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We start from experience every time we start a simulation. We have a place where we have improved the flow, the structure, the way that the buttons work, the way that the simulation interacts, being able to, the way we're displaying results to students throughout the entire sim, how they can track their progress. So there's a lot of different things that go into what we call, or what we're calling Mimic app. And that is kind of this skin. You see the one that says, next to upload conversions, there's that little green check mark, right? Providing better insights into the students of their completed work along the way. Those are all things that are built into our architecture, our framework. It's not something that we need to, reinvent every time we build a simulation. And that's really, really powerful, and something that we're really, really excited for. So next one here shows, maybe, hold on one sec. I lost my slide. Okay, there it is. We build, when we talk about Mimic app and the framework that I just showed you, kind of that skeleton, the main body of every single page, there is going to be built up of a variety of elements. And again, I'm not going to jump into the real technical detail, but think of it as the student interaction, and that element is going to contain the student interactions. It's going to contain which inputs, what decisions the students are going to make, and then there'll be some sort of an association that we're going to use for scoring. So this is an example of, in our marketing principles simulation that we're building, the student's ability to select from a set of questions to build out a survey. So they have information about a particular target audience we want to go after, but they haven't made a decision on their product yet, or their pricing yet, or their positioning statement. So we need to ask some questions so they can hone in those decisions in the following round. So that's when we say element, that's what we mean. And one thing I wanted to illustrate here was how powerful it is that we can take something like this that's built for one simulation, and we can quickly turn around and we could use it in another simulation like consumer behavior or market research essentials, where performing surveys is a much more important or a part of the job that we're going to focus on and dive deeper into in those simulations, as opposed to a principles of marketing simulation where they're kind of just getting that taste. They're going this deep across the entire subject. Whereas with those other subjects, we're going to go a little bit deeper on those other things. But we can turn around and we can swap out the storyline, the scenario, the questions, and we can reuse this element that's already built. Really, really powerful. A couple of other thoughts here on Mimic app, and then I'm going to jump in and show it with the time that we have remaining. Anyways, actually, let's jump into that, just because I want to give ourselves enough time there. So let me share my screen. And so what you guys are seeing here is Mimic Analytics. And again, Brennan is in the chat. He is was instrumental in helping build out the learning objectives, the storyline, and making sure that we kind of connected this to industry. So again, you can see here there's lots of kind of what would be that initial framework that we can leverage, and that will be consistent across not just all of our simulations, but in time, all of our products, to give that consistent feel across all of the StuCamp products. But as we go through the simulation, we're using different ways to convey content to the students, breaking it up into bite-sized chunks so it's not just one big block of text, and we can easily reuse that style of element in any particular simulation, any particular page. Again, this is back to that one that I showed where we can add files, we can drag and drop, and we can easily reuse these for other simulations, right? This is just the ability to upload a file or to download a file. Well, where could we use that somewhere else? We talked about with Market Research Essentials, right? The ability to download a file that includes data on a survey that I just ran, and I want to evaluate the quantitative data. Well, part of that could be data cleansing, just similar to like what we did here, and making sure that my data is good. And being able to download that file. The storyline is that it's survey results versus here it's Q1 web data. And then we could have that uploaded file that what's going to be graded, or what assessment we're going to do on the student's work would be more around, some of the similar aspects here of outliers or, dirty data or bad cells, and they could go through that process. And, different storyline, it's a different subject, but we can use a similar workflow. And that's what we talked through with you, with the subject matter expert, is like, can this particular user interface, this particular student interaction, could we use this and leverage it and still accomplish the goals of your subject or that learning objective? And is it still real to life? And so, again, this is a tool that we are really excited to use. And what I wanted to share here before we jump into questions over the next couple of minutes is we took, and a lot of this was built out as we were building Mimic Analytics. As we then started to build another simulation, which is our marketing principles simulation, a lot of that framework we didn't need to reimagine, we didn't need to rebuild, we didn't need to retool. We were able to say, okay, hey, here we go. Let's jump in. We've got a place to start where the students, the way that they navigate through. Okay, well, I've got my overview. I'm ready to roll. Let's get started. And the couple things I wanted to highlight here is we can quickly take the elements that we're building, and sometimes we need to build a new element, and other times we need to other times we can reuse something that we have from another simulation. And that's a really powerful concept as we go through this, because as we come in here and we look at A/B testing, for instance, again, this is the ability to test and build out an entire landing page and do A/B testing. Well, we could leverage the same concept where I'm not building out a landing page, I'm having to craft a persona, right? So right now it's showing backpacks. Right now it says heroes, section settings, but it could be selecting a persona image and jumping in and saying, okay, what are the characteristics of the persona? So as I come in here, it's, what are the characteristics of the persona? What attributes do you want to include in their persona bio? And we could build that out. And again, those different options have a weight that could then be scored. So again, that's where there's a lot of power in the way that our chief technology officer, the entire product development team we've thought through this and made it so that it's not just one simulation and we're going to build a one-off and then we're going to build another one and then another one, or we can quickly come in and take and with an intern, and I'm not downplaying the fact that he's an intern, it's just someone who didn't know the technology, someone who didn't know our platform could come in and in about in about an afternoon, take all of those elements that we had in other simulations, and he could configure this simulation to have and include those interactive elements. It's not just pictures. It's not just it's not just a sketch. It's actually doing a rapid prototype using our actual simulation elements, and to where within, again, an afternoon, he had built out a simulation for consumer behavior. And again, we've been talking through a lot of those three different types of questions with our author Radhika quite a bit, but we were able to take and come up with what would be essentially a 6-round simulation. And we still need to make changes to the way the backend is going to calculate. We still need to make changes to the scenario and storyline and take out filler text. But to be able to quickly take learning objectives, put them into a framework that's going to allow us to then take it to a focus group, take it to educators and say, hey, are we meeting the learning objectives of your class here? And that is really, really powerful. I hope you can get the vision of why we're so excited. And again, back to some of those original comments that I made around why I am so passionate about what we're doing is I can't go and build out a simulation. I can't go and find an interview for every single one of your students, and neither can you. But can we build simulations? Can we provide hands-on experience via simulation that's going to help them get those same, or it can't replace that internship, but can we get them more prepared for the workforce and more prepared for those internships? So that is why I'm so excited, and why there's a lot of buzz around StuKent as we're ideating through some of the simulations. I know Stu showed that list yesterday in the breakout session where he listed out marketing principles, which we have a lot of work on there. We've done a lot of work. We've got consumer behavior, market research essentials, 2 textbooks that we already have that we'll be introducing simulations for. PR, which is a textbook that we're launching in this fall. Jamie and Aggie, they've been presenting multiple times during this conference. They've been fantastic to work with. Digital marketing analytics. Nathan David mentioned, we mentioned his textbook that's launching soon. And again, we've been able to take this framework, and it's less about, okay, what does this entire new simulation look like? And we can say, okay, what are the key learning objectives? How do we connect that to industry? And can we leverage this tool to do that? And so with that, what questions do you guys have? Let me look here. Monica asked, how often is the simulation updated to keep it up with changing technologies, tools, etc.? Really, really great question. We've thought a lot about this as we look at some of the industry tools. It's if we were going to try to keep up with Google and Facebook and what their platform looked like exactly, we wouldn't be able to do anything else. They change so frequently. So that's where we try to keep it. Platform agnostic. However, with this new platform, this new framework, Mimic app will be updated regularly for UI improvements, UX improvements, functionality improvements, things like that. But then as we work through the subjects, as there are additional changes, many of you know with Mimic Social, this last year we introduced influencer marketing to that simulation because that's an important piece of social media marketing. With Pro, we're in the process of adding product listing ads. And so, yes, great question. As we think through a subject, we want to come up with what that minimum viable product would be for a particular subject or simulation, but then also have what a version 2 would be like, or a version 3. And so that then as we learn more about what you need as the educators, what your students are saying about the product, then we can rapidly change and rapidly develop that simulation. So great question, Monica. Stacy, did I build the app? Me personally, no. It was a lot of there's a lot of vision that came from a lot of different members of StuKent, the team, the executive team, and others, and educators. And then we have a fantastic software development team, product owners and engineers that are actually building out that the simulations. So great question. Bernie had asked, what I'm mostly seeing from StuKent are marketing-focused simulations. Are there entrepreneurship theme or business ownership theme simulations available or in the works? So Bernie, I mentioned in the chat earlier. So entrepreneurship is one that we've talked about. It's an idea that we've got quite a bit of work on. But again, I don't want to overcommit to anybody on this call. That's not the intent of this particular call by any means, but there's a lot of time and energy and effort that goes into a simulation. So just because we have the framework that allows for more rapid development doesn't mean that we are to the point where it's, hey, 2 weeks, we've got a new simulation. There still is engineering work, there's brainstorming, there's a lot that goes into it. And for our roadmap for the rest of this year, we've got about those additional 5 simulations, including marketing principles, PR, digital marketing analytics, consumer behavior, market research essentials. Those are ones we're working on right now. And then, so a lot of these topics that you guys have thrown in today are questions about entrepreneurship, and those are, our mind is already going to 2021 and saying, okay, what are going to be the next simulations? So great question. I hope you could see, I didn't dive deep into the marketing principles sim, but they do market research, they pick a price, they pick their product, they pick their positioning statement, and then they do some advertising, they pick distribution channels. That's at a high level what that marketing principles sim is. You can see how we can easily pivot that to business ownership, where it's not just one product that they're selecting, maybe it's a product line, maybe it's an industry that they're selecting, and it's a group of products that they're going to sell, but we could easily change that storyline and convert that. Let's see our time. We are coming up on the end. We've got Betsy asked, if we have a simulation idea we'd like to work with StuKent on, what is the process? What is the process like? Do you have custom simulations? Would you need a book simulation proposal that would work for you on widely taught courses? Great question, Betsy. So we have, in the past, we've had our Write with StuKent page. We get lots of engagement on professors saying, hey, this is a textbook I would write. We haven't really done that or opened up the floodgates on simulations really until today, right? Where we're saying, hey, tell us more about what you need. Tell us more about what you would want. And we would love to start those conversations. Again, to manage expectations here, please recognize that we've got lots and lots of other simulations and other strategic initiatives as an organization that we're working on. But again, I mentioned there's a lot that goes into the process. So starting the brainstorming, starting the conversation early is very, very beneficial. So Betsy, to answer your question, yes, we'd love to talk about it. So use this QR code or the link in the chat. That is where you can provide some of your contact information, even some of your thoughts, and then we'll schedule a call. I'd love to jump on calls and engage with you and get your feedback on what you think of the direction we're heading with Mimic App and simulation creation, and would love to talk about your specific ideas. So with that said, thank you all for attending. I hope that you got a lot of valuable information from this session. I hope that you were able to think through your subjects and come up with some things that you could take back to your class this next semester and say, oh, I'm going to introduce a guest speaker here because I'm going to tie it to I want to tie industry into the classroom. Or, hey, you know what? If I came up with this activity here, it would help. So hopefully you got some brain, again, those creative juices flowing and some brainstorming coming. And then as an announcement for our the most active poster, again has been following along. We got Stacy Baez. Congratulations, $5 Amazon gift card. And to all of you, thank you for your engagement. Thanks for your participation in this session. And Betsy, I did see that you just said you're still working on you're getting the permissions error. We will get that corrected and make sure that everybody has access to that. So anyone with the link can take that survey. So other than that, again, thank you all for attending. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Please go to the other breakout sessions. Take a look at the other simulations that we already have out and available for you to use. And good luck as you prepare for your next semester. Thanks.